Call to order the meeting of the Design Review Board for Monday, March 1st, 2021. We'll do a roll call, which will be short and sweet. Steve Antonio, here. Polly Rice here, and Anka.
Anka,
Here
yeah.
as well. We do fall one person short of a quorum. We have calls out to the other commissioners or whatever we call ourselves, and if I hear from them on my phone, I most certainly will clue you in. That being said, we are joined by a number of people, in particular Chris Nelson of Nelson Construction for the redevelopment of 32 Iron Horse Boulevard. Of course, we recall you came to us once before. We did a little bit of a preliminary discussion then, which we appreciated, and we look forward to seeing what you got for us tonight. So take it away, Chris.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I am Chris Nelson, Nelson Construction. We reside, or our office is right here at 77 West Street in the old mill. And I do want to introduce a few people that are here tonight as well. We may have a pretty good group here, but Greg Ugaldi is my partner in the Iron Horse project. Mark Arrigoni is here from SLR, which was formerly Malone McBroom, if you haven't seen him lately. Tom Daly as well from SLR. And Jack Kemper is here from Kemper Associates, architects in Farmington. Roz Cifalelli, I think, is here. I think he's one of the tiles where we don't see his picture. He's the architect that's also on the project, who I think, if you remember last time, Roz was presenting some of the information. And then our property managers, Jeff Ferroni and Jeremy Browning are here as well, listening in. So when we were here, believe it or not, it was back October 5th. It hasn't been that we just don't take this very seriously and let things drag, but there's been a lot of site work going on out at the property. There's been continuing cleanup of the old construction yard. Now all the buildings are down. We have done extensive soils testing all around the property just to make sure it is clean. And right now we're doing some monitoring of some wells as well, just to make sure everything is up to snuff in the way we really want it to be on such a sensitive site or adjacent to the rookery and the river behind it. So we also recognize it's a very special piece. It's a special piece in Simsbury Center. There aren't that many opportunities with such a great piece of property, and we want to do something really, really nice with it. We didn't have much time at the last design review board, but you did give us some very constructive comments on both site planning and architecture. And that pushed us to engage Malone McBroom, or SLR, a little earlier, and really jump into this site plan and see what we could do with it. Mike Glidden has also had input into some of this. And then we brought in Jack Kemper, who is really a Farmington Valley architect and has a lot of historical skills. So I'm excited with what we have to show you tonight. So Mark, why don't you just take it over?
I just want to double check, Mr. Chairman, Mike, it's okay if I share my screen here, and I don't know if I need permissions, but we'll find out pretty quick.
Yeah. Yep.
So let me know if everybody can see the site plan.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so a little bit of background. Mark Arrigoni, I'm a licensed landscape architect in the state of Connecticut and a bunch of other New England states. I've been with Malone McBroom for the past 25 years. We've merged with SLR. Myself, my colleague, Tom Daly, have done a lot of work in and around the area. This project is great because we had done some preliminary work years ago on this site, and it's just, I'm excited to be able to work on it again. So for the past several weeks, we've been working with the design team that Chris described, and, really trying to utilize the Simsbury Center Code, utilize the intent of the regulating plan, but also make sure we have a feasible development program that the developers on the project can actually build. And I think we're at a place where I know our team is very comfortable because we wanted to come back and present this. So if I could we have, I think, 4 slides. Jack Kemper has several architectural elevations that he can go through. I was just going to take a couple minutes to walk through the plan. And I hope you all sort of see a resemblance to what the overall vision has always been for this parcel over the last couple of years. So a few things to highlight. The existing Iron Horse Boulevard here. This main central spine road that's being proposed is actually in the same area that the main access to the site is now. The benefits to having this become an access point or a main access point is there's already a break in the existing Iron Horse Boulevard island, and there's already left turn lanes in this location. So we sort of balance the site development off of our building design and then the internal workings within the site. And as you can see, we have an access road here, and then we have an access, we'll call this a secondary access to the north of the site. What we have maintained that's been a sticking point through all the design iterations that I've seen on this project is the open space parcel in the front that is adjacent to the existing trail system. Allows for a green space front yard for any of the development on this specific project. The internal roadway network is really a grid plan, which again is very similar to what has been previously proposed. Our development consists of 4 apartment buildings that we'll get into the detail a little bit later, and they're described as A, B, C, D, and E. We have a clubhouse that sits central to the development plan. Around that clubhouse, we have a small playground tot lot area. We have everybody can see my cursor, correct?
Correct.
Okay, we have a mail kiosk and drop off in this location. We have a pool area that sits to the north of the clubhouse in this location. We have a wonderful open space courtyard behind the clubhouse that overlooks the environmental area, and then Talcott Mountain in the background. And our circulation, as you can see, wraps the site, but it also creates an internal roadway network. We've laid out the roadway to have primarily 90-degree parking on the internal roadway network. And then you'll see the apartment buildings have garage spaces that are serviced in the back with also tandem spaces behind those buildings. So as you can see, this would be garages on building A, garages on building B with tandem spaces behind. Knowing that these buildings would not support garages for everyone in just the buildings, we've also incorporated several garage buildings. So in this particular location, there would be garage pull-in here and garage pull-in on the other side. So you'd get 16 garage spaces here, 14 garage spaces here, and then 16 additional garage spaces over here. Some other interesting facets of the plan is we have a separate maintenance building here with a small office for the maintenance facility. And then we also have tucked the recycling and trash collection in the back in this area over here. So it's not immediately adjacent to any buildings or any residential units. Some other features of the project that I know have always been a very integral part of previous plans is a trail system that connects into your existing heavily used trail system along Iron Horse. So what we have proposed here is a connection, and I'm just going to highlight a trail system that loops the project site around here and then back. And I think it's the intent of this loop trail system to be generally located in this location, although I think we're all aware, I hope you guys are all aware that, in this particular location, there is actually a plateau that sits within the existing vegetation. Exactly where this section of a proposed trail connection is, it could shift 20 or 30 feet in the other direction to the point where if we were all to agree where the best location of this section of trail to be might fall on town property, I think that's a discussion that we can continue to have if this project goes forward to site plan application. But the intent would be this loop trail, which is about a half a mile in length, would be a wonderful asset to not only the residents of this development, but also a connection for people using this linear trail system to actually get back and have an overlook of the rookery and the environmental area in the back of the property, or to the east of the property. A couple other things I just want to point out. The location of this trail system in the back, at the back of the parking, is really where the site now has been graded off. For all intents and purposes, this site is pretty much flat. It's been graded off to an elevation. Then we have a pretty gentle slope that comes down to this floodplain area in the back here, which sits 6-8 feet lower than the development parcel. Because if you remember, the development parcel is out of the floodplain, but this area back here is within the floodplain. So the intent would be to pave this trail to be universally accessible, low maintenance, be an asphalt pavement. But the idea to create a secondary, more passive trail system, potentially not paved, potentially a stone dust trail system that works around the floodplain area and then works in concert with some water quality measures that we're intending to design throughout this area. And I want to make sure we're clear. These are not going to be constructed detention basins. The intent is to create some water quality, whether it's a foot or 2 feet deep, where we can have some fun with the vegetation, wildflowers, pollinator gardens in throughout this area. So it would not be a maintained grass. It would have good water quality characteristics and also very good environmental characteristics. It would be wonderful to overlook this and then overlook the more vast wetland system with the ridge line in the background. I mean, if you could envision bird boxes, bird houses, maybe a little bit of educational signage, this could really be a nice feature for not only this development, but also for avid bird watchers or people who just are looking for something different than the linear trail system. Again, what we really tried to do was use the Simsbury Center guidelines, but also try and put this development flair onto it. So that sort of gives the background on the site plan. If we can go through the next couple slides, be happy to answer any questions that you might have. But I think getting into the architecture will really lend a little bit more detail to what these building masses are going to look like.
Good evening, Jack Kemper, Kemper Associates Architects in Farmington. Chris and Greg asked me to work with Roz and Mike to sort of bring a more Connecticut, Farmington Valley, traditional yet modern feel to these apartments. And going through the Simsbury Center code, I think the key thing was how we break them up into being separate buildings. And you can see my elevations here. We'll start with the building. We've really tried to, I'm doing my cursor, but I don't think it works. But I think you could see that we've tried to make it into 4 distinct buildings across with recessed entries and in between to really kind of make the buildings read as 4. We've also tried to work with some of the materials that we find in Simsbury, the brownstone that we see on so many of the Ensign Bickford buildings, the brick, the clapboard. The keys, I think, are really trying to make it feel like it belongs in Simsbury, where it's not totally. I think your regulations are very good in saying we don't want reproduction. So it's a little more clean too, in terms of how we treat the windows, how we treat the entries, that the buildings feel a little bit more clean. There's 170 units in these buildings, the 5 buildings. We've tried to, this is the west elevation, building A is the street elevation, facing that park. And then this building A east elevation is where the garages are. That faces the interior of the site, facing each other. And we've really tried to make the garage doors work as a sort of a classical base story with the brick, and give them some substance, and tie the building together there. It's a fine line we're walking with, frankly, to make them look separate, but make them look like they belong together. So that's where we're doing. The clubhouse, I think, is a really just kind of very similar to some of the Ensign Bickford buildings on Hot Meadow Street, where you have, there's one I know, and I don't know the names of each of these buildings, but I used to live around the corner from there. And I know there's one with the round windows and the two wings coming out. And that's sort of what was in my head working with the clubhouse. The clubhouse is a much more low slung kind of building that is kind of in the center of everything, but is really designed. It has a bunch of glass, storefront glass, to overlooking the view in the back. That's the east elevation of the clubhouse over there. Yeah, then we got to go to the street elevation. The lower one is the street elevation. I've shown the clubhouse recessed back. That's why it's so light. But this, trying to give this feeling of the separate buildings with maybe some different colors, with the chimneys. We've used these chimneys to work with some of the ventilation and exhaust requirements on some of these buildings. I don't know. I think not every vent will go out through the chimneys, but we hope some will. At this point, we've tried to vary the colors of these so that we have, when you see the buildings, the color kind of reinforces the separation of the buildings. We've tried to really work with kind of sort of the most important building on the street elevation, which is the center, and then the smaller buildings kind of go to the side. A couple things we've done, these roof lines, they kind of help us in terms of getting a south-facing sloping roof for 4 of the 5 buildings. For solar collectors, we've talked about that. We've got flat space where we're on the roof that we can hide all the mechanical equipment. I think we would still have room for some solar collectors on that. So we tried to think about those type of things too. And I'm just trying to think of what else. I think that's basically what I wanted to talk about, the generalities of it, sort of where we're going with it. So thanks.
Yeah, and Greg, I don't know if you wanted to summarize anything up, and I can leave this screen on. I can take it off. It's just let me know what you guys want to do.
Thanks, Mark. And just as we wrap up our formal part of our presentation, we're happy to discuss this and answer any questions. It's really the flow that we talk about when we look at this community and what it can bring to Simsbury. All of us are very similar with life around that area and what townspeople expect. And with this new plan, by bringing the park open space, if you will, out to the front along the trail, and what it does for the community by allowing the flow as you walk the trail system or back to the rookery and you see all what nature has to bring in that area. It's just a fantastic site, as Mark opened by saying. And I think that we're happy with the feel we have right now, and with everything that we've been able to do since our October 5th meeting. As Chris said, we've put a lot of time and thought into what we want this to be and what it wants to be in that area of town. The town has spent a lot of time thinking about this and putting together the materials and regulations and the foresight with what this can be. And we think that we're capturing that now. And we're happy to open it up to any questions and comments that you all have.
I'll go first. I think it's beautiful. I love everything about it. And I think when we spoke in October, we talked about having it fit into the nature of what Simsbury looks like in regards to other historical buildings. And I think you did a great job of that. And I love the greenway along Iron Horse Boulevard and then incorporating the paths in order to go to the back. I plan to take a walk as soon as it's all done.
Okay, if I could chime in, speaking of walking, we didn't, and I know it's more of a minute detail, lighting. All along Iron Horse Boulevard, we have those street lights. Are you continuing any of those into the development, or is this just a daylight path?
We really haven't got to that question yet. Certainly we will have lighting around the streets, and they will be of a nature that fits into the style of the community. And that path really abuts the road for 3/4 of it. So that path will be lit. We can keep the streetlights on the outside of the roadway or right between the roadway and that path. So that might take care of both for a lot of it. I don't know that we're looking to encourage people using that after dark. I don't think that's something that the town is encouraging for Rails to Trails.
No, I agree.
It's something that we want it to be safe, but at the same time, we need to talk to the town and probably the town council. Because when we put a loop like this, and it was in the prior plans and the design charrettes in the past, it does create some liability that we're going to have to share somehow. Mike has expressed that there are other developments that have been built recently where the town, if it's a benefit to the public, the town is accepting some of that liability. We're not looking to get out of anything. We just want to be prudent about the whole process. I think those are details that if we like the site plan, we'll work through.
Yeah, so Chris, my main point was we have a specific lamppost we use in the Iron Horse District, and really that's what I was going for. If you could be consistent with those when you do get to the illumination aspect of the project.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. Are those the Eversource's lights? Are they rented through Eversource, Mike, or are they purchased by the town?
I can give you the specs. We have specs for those.
All right, great.
So
I'll be honest,
Perfect.
you have to purchase.
We certainly do want to work with LED. I don't know if those are LED, but the appearance of the lights will be the same.
they've been retrofit to be LED. So yeah, I can give you everything I have.
And the garages, what was the siding you're proposing for these garages? What type of siding?
There might be some stone accents, but the buildings themselves, there will be a mix of vinyl, PVC. There may be some hardy on the front elevations. We haven't pinned all of that down yet. We're still working on the feel and colors and how it's going to work best. But we've done beautiful jobs with both products in the past. But they would be a clobbered style with possibly some stone or brick underneath it.
And I think the clubhouse has a raised seam roof, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what's.
So do the garages as well, just for consistency? Single level structures?
We haven't talked about that, so we would look into it.
Okay, no worries. Just trying to get my hand on it. As far as, and I know it's another minute detail, have you given any thought? I see a number of trees. Have you thought out what type of trees? You know, just for the legacy of your property? You don't want them too big, you don't want them too small?
Yeah,
Fine.
I would say not at this level, but of course we're going to pay close attention to, the sizing, the caliper that we actually put in and the specification of what type we put in there. I mean, we don't want to put something in there that is going to be susceptible to any disease.
Right.
We don't want to put it all the same in there. So we have a monoculture. We're going to pay close attention and work with the town to try and make sure we get in there with what attractive, as native as we can possibly be, although there are some pretty good cultivars now that are non-native. But yeah, we envision this to be a pretty highly landscaped project.
So, Mike, did you see Catherine Bale is trying to get in? Can you let her in?
Laura will do that right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Catherine would be our quorum. We'll have a quorum when she enters, so I'd like to have her on board.
I have a quick question. This is all rental, or is there any spots for purchase?
No, this would be rental. We have looked at, and times are changing with the economy, but there is just a very strong demand for this. And by keeping it in one owner's hands, we can really control the feel of all the property and take care of it very, very nicely.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Kate. I just want to welcome you. So, Jack, I don't know if you could just give Kate a very brief view of the 4 slides so she can get Kate, just so you understand. We're talking about the property where Simscroft was. We asked them to move forward. They did that. They took a lot of our input into account, and they're back. And Jack, if you could just really briefly, just expeditiously, or I could use another word, let Kate know what we're looking at.
Well, I'll need Mark's help to move the slides.
I'm sorry. That's right.
It's okay. It's okay. There. Kate, what we've done is taken the building envelope and tried to break it down into 4 buildings on each side, and making the buildings somewhat traditional, but also a little more modern and clean. There's some more modern details in between the buildings, the entries, and the windows. The garages are all on the back of the building. When we go back to Mark's site plan, we'll see that when you're on Iron Horse Boulevard, you don't see any garage doors, but the garage doors are all interior focused into the building. About half the apartments have garages. We've tried to work with sort of traditional forms, traditional materials, brick, clapboard, the brownstone, and really try to give these buildings a traditional yet clean, sort of a little more updated feel. Mark, if we want to go to the color, there's the clubhouse. The clubhouse, I was really thinking about how some of the Ensign Bickford buildings work, and we were thinking about more of the brownstone and some of those buildings. There's some really great ones on Hot Meadow, the ones with kind of 2 wings coming out. So that's the clubhouse. This is our building elevation. This lower one, the long elevation, is kind of the view from Iron Horse Boulevard, with a building on each side. And the clubhouse, we just for purposes here, it's set back. This clubhouse is not in line with these buildings. That's why we faded it out. But again, with trying to change the colors and the sort of levels of materials to try and really enhance the feel of separate buildings. So that's it in a nutshell, as
Cool.
Austin Powers would say.
Thanks for doing that. So we're sort of idling here. I have another question as far as the number of parking spots. Obviously, we can see the dwelling units. We're going to need visitor spots too. I assume that was some formula that you've already applied to the site, just to make sure.
Mark, could you take that?
Yeah, so again, working out the details, we're pretty comfortable that we've allotted for, in that 1.5 to 2 space range per bedroom. And again, working out the details of it, I think we have space if we need to add parking. Again, we just don't want to put
Right.
parking in here just to have it. So I think we're pretty comfortable. And as you can see, there are definitely areas where if we need to add it, or if we want to put strategic parking locations for visitors, that's something we can definitely look into. But, looking at this holistically, I think there's a comfort level. We're good. But we also want to make sure that it's not just parking for the sense of putting parking in there. But it's a good question, fair question, and we're going to continue to look at it.
Mark, could you go to the elevation where it shows the rear of the buildings? Right. As you can see along the bottom, there's garage doors. And just to the right of the main entrance in the center, there's a pair of doors. And that's not a unit. That is a full-size, actually it's an oversized garage bay that is for bike parking. So each one of these buildings will have a full garage for the bikes, because we're on the rails to trails, and this is an urban situation. So not that people aren't going to have cars because they need to get to work, but we are certainly trying to keep this as pedestrian friendly as we can.
That's good insight. I'm concerned somewhat too. It's beyond your ability, but when we have our events down at SPAC, sometimes there's paid parking, and I just worry that it's going to be a congestive issue. But that is so off track. Bringing it back in, because one of our scopes as design review is we try to make sure you take your cues from the area buildings to complement one another. And you've used the terms like brick and brownstone. I just want to reinforce that. That's really big. As much as you can you have to be realistic about the expenditure, I understand. But we would always ask that you complement the neighboring buildings as much as you can, being across from Iron Horse Boulevard, which predominantly are brick and brownstone in that area. The color scheme is interesting. I'll let some of the other commissioners comment on it. It is, I understand you do want to use different colors to break it up and have it look good. I'm not so sure there's any blue buildings in the entire center of town. So that's sort of the cue that I'm saying we really want to go off of your neighboring buildings. What color are those buildings? You should be a shade different perhaps, but not introducing a new color to the landscape, in my opinion.
Jack,
Anka, you've been quiet. Do you have a few comments for us?
I'm really impressed with the progress. Honestly, I want to commend the entire team for the effort they put since the last time they presented this the plans for this development to us. It's not an easy job to break up this 5 really massive rental units, but I think bringing Mr. Kemper into the team helped a lot, and you guys so far to this phase, to this stage, you accomplished quite a lot. The renderings look great. I'm not so worried about the color blue. I think it's just part of the rendering. Okay, it's a nice drawing that for now, Steve, I think it will help tremendously sell the development, the project. So all I would advise in the future, when you get into more specific details and in terms of choosing materials, stay with hardy plank. The less vinyl, the better, maybe not at all. Definitely brownstone and brick, it's always welcome. So overall, I'm very pleased with the progress and with what we are shown tonight. Definitely great job.
Thanks, Anka.
Thank you.
Have you had a chance to come up with any input you can share with us? You're on mute.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So I generally think it looks nice. The colors don't bother me at all. I guess I think I expressed this last time, and it might be in contrast to the direction you got from everybody else anyway. I just feel like this would be an opportunity to be able to infuse some more contemporary elements that have a little bit more of that like loft feel. And again, I think this is probably against what everybody else is saying. So, but my opinion is we have a lot of buildings in Simsbury that look like this, or a lot of condos that have this kind of look to it. And maybe it's what people look for, but I personally feel like it could head more in the brownstone, like old mill building converted to lofts kind of look than colonial, especially down on Iron Horse, especially like that's where the train came through. And I feel like it's a great opportunity to infuse that kind of vibe of like, these are old industrial buildings that are being repurposed. And I know you can only do so much with the architecture and the expense of doing things like that. But I personally think that you could get away with something that's got this like old mill meets modern vibe. And it would be really a nice addition to Simsbury and still go with what we have. It kind of fits with the location, not being like right on the downtown drag and, but being close. That's just my opinion. But I think this looks great. I like to see some color. I like to see some things that aren't exactly the same thing being repeated all the time.
Excellent feedback.
So, Jack, why don't you just point out a couple of the things like that we're doing with some of the overhangs and roofing and just some of those details, because we actually, Kate, took those comments to heart, and we have it's a lot more difficult to see on small drawings like this, but a lot of the ideas that you're talking about have been incorporated.
Yeah, one of the things that we're looking at is these parts that are set back are much more modern. We're storefront and dark siding, possibly canopies hung up by chains at the entries, and on the back elevation, the same kind of thing. The clubhouse, and I think it doesn't really read in this type of hand drawing, but we're really thinking that it's kind of storefront and really kind of much more clean, and then we've got to get there to portray that better. Like this back is all glass, and we just need to get that, because we are trying to get some of that feel.
I'm getting that vibe from the clubhouse and from like the way that you did the brick, and then I didn't realize about those recessed areas, but that sounds great in my opinion.
Yeah, we're trying to get there, and we still have a little work to do, but I think we're on our way.
And that was good insight on the depth, the different, the depth of the facade. Polly, do you have any input that you can share with us?
I gave my opinion at the beginning of the commissioner's comments, and I have nothing else to add other than I think it's going to look terrific and excited to see it happen.
Great. So with all those comments, last call, does anyone have anything else before I think we can issue a favorable recommendation for the progress to date? Mike, is that how we would proceed here?
So it's a preliminary discussion, so you don't have to take action on it. I think you gave the applicant some great comments, some great direction. I think that they got a real taste of this new revision, so they can start proceeding with the formal application with some things to keep in mind as they're finalizing it. Some of Kate's comments, for example, to consider. So, and like what you said about the lighting, little detail, those are details that, they're not at that stage, the planning process, but they definitely now will consider it as part of their final plans.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to show us. We appreciate, obviously, you have shown us a great deal of attention, taking into all of our previous comments. And I hope I didn't get too into fine details at times, but it looks great. I think we've all said that. And we wholeheartedly embrace you as becoming part of our community. So thank you.
Well, we really appreciate your attention to this stuff and your comments. And it is, our next step really is to dig deeper into the site engineering, which then leads to drainage control, to grading, to all that kind of stuff, and landscaping as well. We also can look more at the architecture and really start to get that into CAD and start to see where the opportunities are to blend the old and the new. And that's really what we want to do. We don't want it to look like it's trying to be a historic or a reproduction. We definitely want it to have more millennial appeal, if you would put it that way, and really urban lifestyle. One thing we didn't talk too much about was the lifestyle here, and we opened up behind the clubhouse, and there's an 8,000-foot area there that is going to be a combination of patio and green, so that there can be parties out there, there can be food truck events out there, and it's just gonna be community. So that's just such a great way. People want to live indoor, outdoor these days, and so this community building is going to have an even bigger purpose. We're trying to incorporate some of the COVID lessons that we're learning right now into how people want to live, into air quality, into, well, like photovoltaic, and we are setting this up because 10 years from now, we're really trying to push toward a zero carbon footprint in now not only the state, but nationally. And so we'd be foolish to build a building that is built the way we did it 20 years ago. We want to build this to get away from fossil fuels. We want to build this so that it's set up for electric cars and really, really low energy use, but at the same time, the way people want to live. So that's what we're going for. I know it's a big ask for ourselves to try to incorporate as much of that as we can and still make it a viable project. But we've been fortunate, and this is where we want to go.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank
for
you.
your time
Thank
and
you.
your consideration.
Great,
Thank you.
great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Let's continue with our meeting. There's only one other agenda item. It's the approval of the minutes. Did anyone have the opportunity to review them?
I looked at them.
Okay.
They were fine.
Okay. I actually have a couple small changes. Just line 42. We probably want to acknowledge its end, the word A-N-D, end removal of illumination, just so we have it on the record that that sign is no longer illuminated. And then line 68 says that landscaping is what is establishing the perimeter. We want to put in that it's planter boxes, not landscaping, that establishes the perimeter. So those two small changes, and I hear no others, so I'll make a quick motion that we approve the minutes of February 1st, 2021 with those two small changes. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. So those are passed. Mike, is there anything else we should be doing before we adjourn?
No, I don't have additional business for you this evening. But
Okay.
thank you for the discussion tonight. That was very helpful.
No, I hope I didn't get too far in the weeds of the details. Just things that I'm thinking about as we go.
I was really pleasantly surprised that they took our comments seriously to heart and they improved so much. I was really blown away. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks nice now.
Yeah.
Not
If
just-
they will continue with, using good quality materials, it will be fantastic. And I think Kate's comments are also great. Very good points, Kate. So yeah, no, it will be a nice development. Yeah. Keep the pressure on them. Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for the time. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
Good to
everybody.
see you all.
Bye.
You need a motion for adjournment?
Do we need to adjourn?
Yeah.
to
Wait,
adjourn.
Anka. Would you like to make a motion, Anka?
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Opposed?
Okay, now
Good
I'm
night.
out. Bye.
Now we can say goodbye.
Bye.